Good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is The Augmentation of Man with Kent and Renee Miller.
As you can see, it is morning. The sun is shining right there. It's very bright.
And we're still having our coffee.
So
we hope you're having yours too.
Yes. We're going to do the last part of our series in chapter 12, I think, isn't it?
I don't think this is the last one.
Okay.
But maybe we're kind of in the going toward from the middle to the end.
Okay, so this is a challenge. This what we're going to cover today is kind of a challenge. You have to listen carefully. We're going to try to make it as clear as we can understand it about the coming changes. And if you don't understand it, please subscribe and then send us a question. Maybe we can explain it further.
We're taking this out of The Augmentation of Man, a Study in Renaissance, chapter 12. And what we're going to do is, there's so much going on, not only in our society, but in the cosmos.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of activity going on that we're not exactly aware of. And there's some events coming up that are going to be rare. They're particularly
rare occurrences.
Rare occurrence.
Yeah. And then remember, these ancients only tell us what we need to know, not what we want to know. They only tell us the things that we can understand.
And I have a hard time with that because I like to know all the nuts and bolts that go into making something.
Even though she may not understand it.
And I don't have the background information like the physics that are involved. And so this video got put out a little later than we really wanted to have it put out because we were searching for more information, particularly me and poor Kent. You know, I'm always telling him, come on, let's do a meditation because I need to know a little more about this.
And do we need to know, or are we at this point in human knowledge? Can we understand the simplicity of things? Because simplicity is the key to understanding. And do we overwhelm ourselves with information that we don't understand?
Yeah, and that's really the territory that I was getting into because I wanted to understand it better, but I don't have the astrophysics and the physics background to be able to really understand it. So we just had to accept the fact that the ancients weren't going to give us more information because they knew that we wouldn't understand it. And then we can't give it to anyone else if we don't understand it.
So with this,
we're going to give the basics.
The basic, trying to understand. We're going to talk about three things. First, the change in the direction of the NeuroNet, which we have talked about recently. The beginning of the reverse rotation of the magnetic field. And you've heard about this on the news and how the magnetic field is weakening every year. And so we're looking at a reverse rotation in that area. And then the Earth's wobble. And you know the Earth is in wobble form.
And that's actually, that's actually not the balanced state. So this here is all about reinstating balance, and it's about upgrading so that it can support a better communication system in the universe, in this section of the universe, particularly for humanity.
Okay, let's talk about reverse of the changing direction of the NeuroNet.
Okay, so let's just, for people who didn't see the last video, discuss what the NeuroNet is briefly. And that is, it's strings of charged ions in the atmosphere, up in the gases in the atmosphere, that form communication pathways that actually channel in much like our nerves do, the light. And this is the light that we're talking about in ancient texts that carry intelligent energy communication systems that we can access and that we can use to get universal information.
So you're talking about many occurrences here on Earth, which we see on the news and things. But now we're talking about events that occur in the atmosphere.
And so this here change in the direction of the NeuroNet is talking about, much like our nerves. If you know that nerves are, you've got one nerve and you've got another nerve, and this one is sending the message and it has to cross a gap to the next nerve.
It says there's a pulsating light between them.
And in the atmosphere, there's this pulsating light, and it jumps from a nervous type structure in the atmosphere from one juncture to another. And it travels on these plasmic cords. So the plasmic cords are charged atoms.
Yeah.
And so it's talking about this direction where it's moving, the light, the intellectual energy is moving in one direction currently, and then in the future after this event, it's going to change direction.
But it'll have to pause before it changes. It'll pause for a short period and then it'll change direction.
Right. And so this event is going to shut down part of the NeuroNet, but not entirely. And then it's going to restart moving in a different direction.
It's a dark time. Just a question. My mind.
I don't think so.
Pause or something. We don't know.
I don't think that it's going to, because that was one of my questions was, is this event going to cause enough disturbance in the atmosphere that it's going to stir up all this dust? It may be.
We don't know.
But I tried to get an answer from our ancients, and they did not confirm that. So this is going to be an atmospheric disturbance, and it is coming from outside Earth. It's coming from somewhere in the universe, and I kind of liken it to almost like a wind coming in. Whoa. It's a disturbance that's going to stir up the gaseous atmosphere around Earth.
Yeah, but this will also cause a land movement, which causes a reaction on the subduction systems, and there are several around the Earth. And a reaction on the subduction systems, there's one on the Atlantic side. There's the most famous one that we know of is on the Pacific that runs from Vancouver down to northern San Francisco, and it's called the subduction zone. So if the subduction zones are affected, it'll cause a land movement.
Right. So this is a disturbance in the atmosphere, and it's supposed to create a threefold increased distribution of gases. So, everything is moving in the atmosphere and in the air. We just don't see it unless it's in the form of a wind, and we can see the leaves and the effect of that movement. We can't see the air moving or the gases moving, but we can see things that are moving relevant to that movement in the air. And so this is supposed to increase the movement of air gases in the atmosphere by threefold.
That could be almost like a hurricane or tornado.
It's hard to imagine, but evidently what it's going to do is create this density of gases through this disturbance. It's going to react with the electromagnetic field, and it's going to create these flashes of light. Yes. Those flashes of light are going to be reflected out. Again, hard to imagine, reflected out. So a big light event in the atmosphere above Earth. And they've told us that when this happens, we need to be inside. We need to be, if you got a basement, be in a basement, be in a basement.
Protected area, much like if a tornado hits, you go to the basement,
right,
to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, then we're going to go to beginning.
And so I just want to finish with that, is that this increased movement in the atmosphere is probably going to have some sort of an effect, like, you know, on maybe a sonic effect, or some sort of vibrational effect on the Earth itself.
It'll be a vibrational effect, but we don't know exactly the effect. We're putting our own interpretation, we're guessing basically of what the effect will be, but they are telling us it's going to be
significant enough to cause land movement, maybe in the form of earthquakes, and also volcanic movement.
Yeah, but
so volcanic activity.
That doesn't cause the earthquake. Doesn't really cause the land movement. The land moves because it sits on the surface of the earth.
It could be. We're trying to piece this together, but it could be actual crustal slippage.
Yeah. So with that,
so
I'd like to go to the next one, the beginning of the reverse rotation of the magnetic field. That's been talked about in scientific papers and places like Suspicious Observer on YouTube, different places. And the native people talk about
but they can document this too in core samples. So they drill, you know, small core sample of the Earth. They drill it down in through the dirt, pull that out, and they can see where the iron, the direction of the iron in those core samples is pointing toward that magnetic north. Which
has changed over
it has changed
thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, so they can see during one period that the iron is facing one direction, and then they go a little deeper and it's facing a different direction. And so they can actually map out where not the true north, but the magnetic north has been. And so we're being told that eventually these two poles will come back to one point. And that
the two poles, you're talking about the true north and the magnetic north coming together,
and that they will eventually come together, and actually that event is going to trigger the axis change, which we're going to get into next. But
so what changes is the magnetic flow within the Earth will change direction, which will create volcanic activity.
And this is going to originate from an electrical pulse that is coming in on the NeuroNet. So this is some sort of a vibrational event that will result from that electric pulse, which is kind of like the instructions.
You're talking about the electrical pulse around the Earth.
It comes in on the NeuroNet. It starts actually at source, which tells me this is coming originally from the creator, and it's traveling this network, and it is changing everything. It's not just Earth.
All spheres within our solar system. No, we don't know outside the solar system, but within our solar system or within our field will shift. The poles will shift.
And to me, it also says that this is probably going on everywhere. So if you look at not just Earth and Earth's electromagnetic field pole reversal, there are field poles between planetary spheres. And so it creates a repulsion effect that keeps these spheres from colliding with each other. So if you take two magnets and you're putting the same charge toward each other, so like both positive ends toward each other, they're not going to attract, they're going to repulse, they're going to push away. And so this is the same sort of effect. So if you look at the Earth has a positive and a negative end, and maybe the next sphere, where if you've got a positive end here, the next sphere is going to have a positive end that's facing Earth and a negative end on the other. And then the next sphere may have a negative end facing this side. So, so what you have is an electrical pulse making its way through this neuronetical network, a nerve-like network, releasing an electrical charge or an electrical pulse, and it is actually causing everything to shift in its poles. So the poles shift not only for Earth, but it's going to shift for everything out there.
And what is that? That's keeping everything in balance.
Yes, everything. And the reason why it has been explained to us is exactly that. Is to create balance. So everything has to change in its polarity.
In balance. Right.
And it's like we hit this certain area of a universally or galactically out there in space, and this is going to pervade throughout our solar system, shifting the polaric field of all spheres.
Now remember that everything within our solar system will be affected, which will affect everything within we are on the outer arm of the our galactic universe, you could call it, a galactic system. So all of those in the surrounding areas will have to shift to keep this balance intact.
And so, it's going to also have an effect on the electromagnetic field and the flow of that field. So that will change to some degree as well.
So this rebalancing effect will also change slightly the orbital pattern of the different spheres.
Possibly, because we're also being told that orbits will change to some degree.
It's not a huge degree, but some degree. So
this is all to balance, to bring balance to everything. And it's hard to believe that things are controlled by other entities, but they are.
Controlled by nature too.
And
it changes things.
Science is built into everything, and so this was all created and masterminded by Creator. And there's universal laws that dominate everything.
Things are supposed to be, how they're supposed to react,
how it's supposed to behave, and how balance is supposed to be maintained. And then the concepts, when we talk about universal laws and concepts, the concepts are what we study and what we learn from that relate to the laws. And so it's all intertwined. And even when we talk about all these events, we see earthquake activity, we see volcanic activity as a result of these events, because all these fields interface with each other and they're all related to one another.
Okay. The thing is, we cannot change what naturally happens here on Earth or any other planet within our solar system, but we can prepare for what is going to happen. It's like preparing, if you know a hurricane is coming or something of that nature, you can prepare for it and
write it out.
If you're prepared. If you're not prepared, it's going to be disastrous. Well, this is the same way. So we cannot prevent this climate warming or climate cooling, whatever you want to jump on what bandwagon, cannot be prevented, but we can be prepared.
And so the last thing we're going to talk about is the wobble changing. And so this wobble is created by this axis being at roughly about 22 degrees. And so what you have is this rotation of the wobble, and it's actually out of balance. And at one point I had asked, why is the axis where it's at And the answer was given to us was that these polar ice caps, the accumulation of the ice and the weight causes a very slow drift of the axis. And so there's going to be some sort of an event, and we believe that it's related to this drift of the magnetic north to the true north, and that once that happens, then the Earth's axis shifts. It's going to happen, the way that they explained it is in two shifts, one about 5% and then one 15%, which will bring us up to almost zero. And so the axis would be
2% off of zero. The thing is that it will, waters will return to the ancient lands. This will cause the waters to shift. Water is the stabilization of Earth. Once the water shifts and settles down, then the Earth will stabilize for another period of time.
You're talking about the axis moving, and it's going to cause a redistribution of the oceans. And so these oceans, we're told, will go back to where they existed in ancient times. So for example, in the United States, the ocean went clear over to Salt Lake City. We still have Salt Lake there. That was an ocean at one time, 180 million years ago. Where was our axis at that time? I don't know. But they're telling us that this will trigger the movement of the oceans. There'll be more ocean water over the surface of the Earth and less land. Yeah. And it's going to be warmer. They've told us it's going to be warmer.
Be less land because other lands that have been under the water will come up.
Right.
I was told you could walk from Hawaii to
Midway.
That's a long way. Mm-hmm. So the new lands that will rise, and some of the old lands
will go underwater. And this happened before because
yes, it has.
You know how many civilizations and ancient structures have they found under the ocean waters? So it has been there before.
Yeah, we can't run fear from this. This is a natural occurrence which we have to understand, and then we can prepare for it.
Yeah, and so now the whole crux of our conversation is to educate people as to what we've been told is predicted to happen, and to explain why it's happening, and then to tell you how to prepare for it. And so the reason why it's happening is to bring balance back to the Earth. Everything has to be rebalanced. We're moving into a new cycle of a higher enlightenment and higher learning. So everything, the matter and everything has to be brought to a higher level of expression to be able to support that vibrational field at a higher level.
So it is nice to live by the ocean, to look at the ocean. It's so serene and creates a gentleness within that person. But you should not live in coastal areas.
And not even just around the coast, but far inland. You need to move far inland, away from coastlines.
Yeah, and understand why this is happening. When we explained it, it's a natural phenomenon that takes place here on Earth and other planets. And the beginnings of the changes are now just the very, very, very beginning. Okay, so.
And so when you talk about massive Earth changes, this is going to affect other things, particularly our food supply. And we're already seeing people saying we're going into a period of a global food shortage.
So why not grow our own food like they used to? Grow our own food, share with your neighbors. If you have more than you need, abundance, share. It's going back to sharing with each other, no matter what the person looks like or what country they're originally from. That does not matter. Humans should share with humans.
So you also want to stock up on food supplies. So
and have a source of water, which is really important. You can only go 3 days without water.
Water and being able to secure a clean water source. So, you know, when you talk about shifting ocean waters, what do we have?
New springs may come up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But we have a lot of things that exist around our coastal waterways. We have refineries, we have petrochemical plants, we have nuclear power plants. Expect all of this and more, because once it gets into our neighborhoods, it gets into the sewage. This water is going to be very contaminated for a period of time. So how do we go about securing a clean source of water? And I would throw out there harvesting water off of our roof line into water barrels. We could
And if
also,
you have a well, that's good.
yeah, and there's actually, we had watched at one point these homemade wells that you can watch on YouTube. There's instructional videos where it seems to be quite easy to drill a very narrow hole, 8 feet deep or so, depending on where you live, and to be able to put a hand pump on those wells. Just YouTube it. It was actually quite interesting.
And
watching
with the
that.
ingenuity of the human race, we'll be able to come back from this. The things that are away from the coastal lines we'll be able to come back sooner. Okay, so do not underestimate the ingenuity of the human race.
Plus, we're going to have help in the future.
Yeah, we can come back from this, and we can come back and have a brighter future than what we have right now.
It will be a brighter future, but we have to understand all of this has to occur to bring everything back into balance. We're going to have a warmer world. This is not the first time our world has been warmer. It goes way back to the time of the dinosaurs when our climate was warmer. It was more tropical. There was more water over the surface of the earth. We're going to return to that. Yeah. And so,
but you're not going to turn into a dinosaur.
When we say that, the focus on the carbon and the methane, yes, may be contributing to the earth warming, but we're being told it is being predicted that we will have a period of time where it will be warmer. That is in the plans. Yeah. So even if we cut back on our emissions and we try to control methane by depleting the amount of cows that we have on Earth, we still have termites. How are you going to control that? That produce a lot of methane. And so, and other things, these are all natural gases. We are going to have a warmer climate no matter what, because as the Earth's orbit changes slightly, we're going to be closer to the sun, and we're going to have a more elongated orbit. So these are things that we cannot control.
Yeah, so seasons will be dictated by that orbit.
Yeah, but, instead of the wobble.
Yeah, and so we will learn to live with the new system, and we will learn to live and prosper.
And then in the future, 50, 60 years down the road approximately, we give you years. Do not take it as set in stone, because this is all subject to alignment of planets and rotations in orbits and things like that. So it's just a general example. Yeah, it's just a general marker, but we're told that we're in the future, not too distant future, we're going to have micro ice age.
Oh, okay.
And so we have a warming up effect, then we're going to have a cooling off effect. These are all natural cycles. And so, we do need to, as far as the climate, and not the climate, but the earth, we need to concentrate on all the chemical production we're doing. We're poisoning the planet.
As the earth stabilizes after the shift, after the earth stabilizes, then things will settle down, and we will learn to live with the changes, the natural changes of each season
And the
and
next
plant
cycle is all
accordingly.
about learning about the natural world. So we will move away from the chemical world. We will move away from plastics. We will move away from all
Hopefully-
this production of aluminum.
Hopefully AI will come along then. We don't know. Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow.
And
So-
we're going to live in harmony with the earth and naturally. So not to downplay the global warming and that it's just that we need to focus on other things, because there are things that are going to be much more important for us to
Okay.
focus on, especially when these oceans move and we have these petrochemical
Okay.
plants that are flooded with water.
Okay,
This is going to
so
be
this is-
really nasty.
Okay, this is going to be nasty, but nature, you forget, nature has a way of taking care of things.
Right.
And nature will take care
Mhm.
of all this contamination.
And we
And
were
we-
actually
and we-
told
and we-
approximately how long that would
And we've
take, right?
proven it through experiments with oil
Mhm.
in the field than when I was working. So nature, the microorganisms can and will take care of these things. It just
Right.
takes a period of time. So we have the good things to look at, what's coming. Not everything is bad. Don't hide under the couch or whatever. Look and say things are going to get better. And
They
we-
are. And this
yeah,
is a positive change.
Yes.
It's not a negative change.
Yes. And with that, we'll say thank you for being with us today.
Yes. And thank you for joining us, of course. But please subscribe. And if you like to get notifications, hit the bell. And then join us over on our podcast if you like podcasts at anchor.fm/the augmentation of man.
Yeah.
And,
you can join us on,
Our website is verdience.com.
or you can join us on BitChute.
If you're joining the movement to move away from censorship, we're on BitChute at the Augmentation of Man. And we're also on Parler if you like Twitter and you're looking for an alternative, we're on Parler as well.
Okay.
So there you have
Okay.
it. And as always, peace be with you on your journey to enlightenment. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.